Hartwell Champagne. I was born in a little community called Henry, Louisiana, November the 18th, 1932. I finished the 8th grade, and the only promotion I felt I could get from then on was in the Army.
So
So I joined the Army.
and when did you enlist in the Army?
February the 21st, 1950.
And you were drafted or
No, I enlisted.
enlisted?
Yeah,
And in the Army.
in the Army.
Army. Did you go down to the office and enlist, or?
Yes, I went to the recruiting office, and they gave me a test, and I passed it, and I got my mother to sign for me
Because you were 17,
yeah,
right?
I was 17.
And they had to sign.
I had to get my permission from my father or my mother.
How many kids in the family? Your family?
Eight. Eight children.
Were you the youngest or the oldest?
No,
or?
I was the oldest boy, but the third in my family, the third kid.
So they approved you to join.
Yeah, my father did, because he had lost a brother in the First World War. Two of his brothers went in the war,
Wow.
and one was killed. And but he wasn't killed on the battlefield. He was mortally wounded, and he lived to come back to the States and died.
Oh boy.
And he had that fear that if I went in the service, well, I might get killed.
Right. If I remember right, you said it was a devastation in Korea when you first got there. It was.
Yeah, it was total chaos. The the 24th Division at Daejeon had been rolled over by the North Koreans, and we were the first replacements to be put on the line. And at that point, we didn't have much of a strategy because everyone was withdrawing. And so we joined in and took positions, and we couldn't hold, so we just ran. We retreated. They called it a strategic withdrawal. I called it running like a rabbit to keep from getting killed, because the North Koreans were good. They meant business, and they had the Russian T-34s, and we didn't have much heavy armament or tanks at that moment, but it wasn't long before we started to get quite a bit of equipment, and also a larger number of men.
Right. Now, if I remember right, you were shot in the back of the head.
On the day of my capture, I was shot, a bullet went through my steel helmet, and I must have had I didn't know much about medical things at the time, but I'm sure I had a concussion, because my head stayed woolly for a long time, feeling like I had a headache, and my ear had been perforated when the steel helmet slammed up against my head, and to this day I have a squealing in my ear.
So the bullet didn't go through the helmet. It just
No,
couldn't cut.
it went through the steel helmet, through the liner on one side, and through the other side. It went completely through.
So did it hit your skull?
No, by a miracle, it did not.
Boy, you were lucky.
I had 3 rolls of tissue paper that you get in your C rations, and it cut all 3, and they stayed in place. That was close.
And this knocked you down, if I remember right.
It knocked me down twice. The first time I didn't know that I had fallen, but then I got up, partially got up, I guess, and then I got my memory back, and then I fell back, and I realized what had happened. I saw the bullet in my steel helmet laying right in front of me, and I didn't have much time to think about it. I just put my helmet back on, and I finished going up the hill. But as I started up, I realized that the impact had affected my mind and my body. And it took all the strength I had to get to the top of the crest, which was about 100 or 150 feet. That's how the effect of the bullet hitting me.
You were weakened quite a bit
Yes,
and dazed. And
yeah.
what happened next?
Well, then the fighting started, and all day we fought in that same position. We had about 82 men from C Company. We had some from Dog Company. And when the battle was over, there was 4 of us that walked off as prisoners.
And they brought you to. They marched you. And
Well, they brought us down the hill, and we had, at the moment, we didn't know what was going on. They walked us down the hill to a level area, and they had captured other guys, and most of them had wounds, and we carried them down the hill, and when we got down to the road, those that you could tell could not make it because they were too badly wounded, they put them in a house on the side of the road, and then they brought us to it looked like a schoolhouse, and they had a huge number of guys in there they had captured from the rear area, the artillery units and the headquarters, and all they wanted from us was our name, rank, and serial number.
and these were the Chinese that captured you?
The Chinese communists, Marxist communists.
Were you the one that had the helping the guy that got shot in the buttocks? Is that?
Correct. His name was Coffee, and I helped him up the hill before I got shot, before I got hit in the head, and I had a medic next to me, trying to put fluid in him to keep him alive, and he died while I was carrying him, and I told the medic, I said, he's dead. We're wasting our time. I said, you can tell he's dead. He's turned gray. And he said, no, I can't do that. He says, I have to be positive that he's dead. But he said, go on. He said, go on up the hill. He said, that's what, I'll stay here and take care of it.
Boy, pretty brave medic to stick around.
Brave medic, but he lost his life too.
He did. I didn't.
I didn't tell you that yesterday. When I turned around, that's when the bullet hit me. And then when I finally got up to the top of the hill, after a few minutes getting my composure, I looked down and he was laying over Coffee, dead. The bullets were just like, it was just, they were all over.
Like rain.
Yeah, the pine needles were falling on top of me, and you could smell the smell of pine needles. And then later on during the battle, all day, it lasted all day, the pine needle, the smell of pine needles, and the smell of blood, and the smell of the gunpowder. To this day, I smell it. And when I'm around a pine tree and I smell that pine smell, it comes right to my mind. That's my memory.
It's embedded in there.
Yeah, it's embedded in my mind. And I had some pine trees on my property. I cut them all down. Yeah. And every time I would go around them, I would have that remembrance. And I told my wife, I'm going to cut these trees while they're still small. And I got rid of all the pine trees.
There's been talk about post-traumatic stress. Is that something you had at all in your life? Do you remember a lot of these? Do you have visions of these in your mind when you're sleeping or something like that? Do you go through any of these?
Yes. It's like in the gray area of my, when I go to bed, just moments before I pass out, I will get it's kind of like a vision, and everything comes to me. But it's always a different subject. And one that often would come to me is those dead bodies on top of that hill. When the Chinese took all their clothes away from them and then piled them up, that comes to me. And I see the faces. But post-traumatic syndrome to me is it's like addictive when when these memories come to me. There's nothing in the world that I can do to stop it.
You can't erase it.
I can't stop it. It's too strong. I have to go through it. I have to go through the process. And I'll see a dead man, one of those guys, I remember him well on the front line. His face comes to me, and I try not to see him, but I can't. I can't stop.
You can't erase it.
And the bad part about it is the next day, I feel like I have no purpose in life. I'll sit on my patio, and it seems like, what is there to do? What should I do today? And I feel like blasé for a day or so, and then I start living again. But that's the way it affects me. Now, if that is PTSD, I don't know, but that's the way I feel. And this happened to me many, many times, but it's waning away as I get older.
Interesting.
That if that's my definition of PTSD, I guess I've had it. And I also have memories of the POW camp as well, of men lying in the alley after being thrown out of the buildings, waiting for details to pick them up and bring them. In the wintertime, we would bring them across the waterway. We'd walk across the ice, on the ice, and we'd put them on the side of the hill. And
they wouldn't even bury him because the ground was frozen.
No,
right?
no, you couldn't bury him. So, but not until spring. Spring, we would they would bring them to this hospital where they died, and then we had there was a mass grave behind it, and that's where we would put them, and put some dirt over them. After we left Camp 5, we were brought to a place called Camp 3. We started the camp, and everyone was so sick and so despondent, and there was nothing left to us. And no one could chop enough wood to cook the food. And so I decided, well, hell, I was a wood chopper when I was a kid. And the axe was, at that time, I finally got a better axe. But at that moment, they had a couple of axes that looked like wedges, and with a 3/4 inch pipe as a handle. And I chopped enough wood to cook the corn. At the time, we had started with corn, but we promoted to rice and other grains, soybeans too. They would feed us soybean in a soup like. And then I went to the Chinese guy that used to run the kitchen, and I told him, I said, "Get big axe. I said, get me a big axe." And he came over and brought me an axe that looked a whole lot like an American axe. And I could chop wood then. I would chop far more than we need, so I was way ahead of my game. And I had another friend that was helping me. His name was Raymond Martinez, and his axe wasn't as good as me, but he told me, he said, "Frenchie, being that you're so good at it," he said, "you deserve the best axe." So he had a lesser axe, not as good, but he did a fair job. And then I would switch over and carry water, and I regained my health, the exercise, and my mind was on that job. I enjoyed it, and I knew that if I continued to do it, and I felt good, well, that was my ticket out of that place, because to me there was no past, no future. This was my life, and I think that really helped me survive. While other guys, they survived, but their lives were so empty they would walk around the camp area, and they had hollow brains, hollow scalps, because there was nothing left to them. They had suffered so much in Camp 5. And but we lost several guys in Camp 3. I remember the last guy that died was Sergeant Smoke. He died of a heart attack. And but most of us managed to make it out of Camp 3. But Camp 5 was truly a death camp. I think the number was 1,600 that died out of about 3,000. Then after August, after we moved out, they restructured the whole camp. They took all the sergeants out, the officers in a different place too, and they pretty much left us alone about the indoctrination. Once we got to Camp 3, they never mentioned indoctrination anymore. They never gave us any more lessons on communism versus capitalism. But in Camp 5, they were determined they were going to make little commies out of us.
Was that run by the North Korean enemy or the Chinese?
That was run by the Chinese.
Camp 5?
Yeah. The indoctrination was run by the Chinese. The Koreans just wanted us dead. They just hated us good quite a bit.
Wow.
And they wanted us dead. Eventually they faded all the Koreans out of the camp completely. And the Chinese took over. And it was a terrible time. And that hospital, I went there, I didn't see any medicine. And during the winter of 1950 and 51, there was no medicine. If you got sick, you better learn how to survive, or it was scourge for you. And the food that gave you dysentery was the food that would cure you or kill you, because there was no change in the diet. That was it. And that's a fact.
And you were released eventually, right, from Camp 5?
No, from Camp 3.
3. You went from 5 to 3.
Yeah, and then from there, that's where when the war ended.
You were put on trucks or something?
We were put on trucks, and we were trucked to Manpo. And there we got on we were brought to a point, and then we were put on a train, and then we went to Manpo. I'll never forget, we were on top of a tall bridge, and we could look way down there to a river. And we got to talking about, we said, maybe they plan to blow that bridge up and kill us all right here. We're just talking. And then we got on some trucks. That memory from the camp on the trucks to that train is somewhat vague to me. But we were on this train because I'll never forget this sergeant. We were all sleeping, and we went through a tunnel, and he wakes up and he's hollering. He says, "We're going to get bombed." He said, "You got to run." And he was going, and it was pitch dark. And he was in the middle of the box score, there was an opening. And everybody was screaming, catch him, or you fall out. And we finally caught him, and he was having a terrible nightmare. And it could be that we got on trucks again in Manpo, and from there we went all the way to Quezon. We went to Quezon, and they had some tents for us, and we stayed in the tents. And we're still eating their food, not American food, but the Red Cross came in. And I'll remember this. There was a delegation, and they were feeding us potatoes. And they had black spots all over the potatoes. It was they were boiled, and they were kind of like in a stew. A couple of the delegates in this entourage was crying when they walked out to see the food they were feeding us. And then we waited our turn to be turned loose. It was the 29th of August.
And they exchanged Chinese prisoners, North Korean prisoners for you, if I remember right. Right? Didn't they do
Yeah,
that?
it had to be proportional. Their numbers were far greater than the American. But that's the way it was set up, so that the last day of repatriation, everybody on both sides would be repatriated. So their number going north was far greater than the number going south, us going south and being released. And that's the way they had it figured. I think it was 129 of us.
So like 200 or 300 of them.
Yeah, well, far more. They had like 155, 170, up to 170 prisoners.
What's the most memorable thing from your experience in the Korean War and getting there and after your release?
I would say to the kids, get the best education you can get, and believe in your heart to be free is the greatest gift that you can have. Because when someone owns you, like they own me, life is the most terrible thing in the world. That's why the caged bird sings, because he has no freedom.
Interesting.
For,
Good
for-
thought.
that's my message. And to the adults who is free and believe in freedom, teach these kids that. That's my message to
Get a
them.
good education.
Yeah,
Well, thank you very much
you're quite
for
welcome.
the second time, but it was well worth it.
All right.